Oleg writes, can you review the Citizen NY0040? Designer notes, subject 13. What subject would you like us to discuss next? Subscribe and comment to let us know. The diver's watch market is like the Great Barrier Reef. It's just a part of the overall sea of watches you can sink your eyes and pockets into, but the more you dive into this subcategory of watches, the more you realize how much there is to explore. In this exploration, you will find the other Japanese dive watch, the Citizen NY0040. The dimensions of the NY0040 is 42mm in case width, lug to lug is 48mm, lug width is 20mm, and thickness of 12mm. This is identical to its better known rival, the SKX. Citizen released this watch in 1997, its answer to the Seiko SKX line of dive watches. Well, at least we think it's an answer. But that's really the thing. The watch community likes to pit things against each other. But is the ProMaster a real alternative to the darling SKX? The short answer is yes, it is, if you can get one. The NY0040 has been harder to get in the US market, but elsewhere they are still widely available. The NY0040 is powered by the Miyota 8200 movement. This is a Citizen-developed movement that sports 21 joules, unidirectional rotor, 45-hour power reserve, that's around 5 hours more than Seiko's Diver. It's also a non-hacking movement similar to the Seiko 7S26, but hand winds. This is a welcome feature when compared to the SKX. Accuracy is consistent to 2 seconds by most reviews. Now, many would contend that it's more accurate than the SKX, but you can readily find people with time graphers and testimonies saying that the SKX holds the same accuracy. The build quality is very solid, and many owners mention that it's a better build than the SKX. Let's scrutinize that claim. The bezel is a noticeable difference, with the NY0040 being just a 60-click bezel versus the SKX 120. It ratchets loud and crude. This feels like a downgrade. But in closer examination, this actually makes it less likely to be misaligned from the hour and minute markers. After all, this is what a dive vessel is for, accurately pointing to the time of your dive, where minutes can mean seeing the next daylight or being permanently part of the ocean. The SKX, however, has its misalignment issues that's almost as synonymous to its revered brand. Then there is the play between the bezel clicks. The NY0040, for all its crude and rough bezel clicks, barely has or no play at all. The SKX has a little bit of this, and frankly some Swiss-made watches as well. Citizen ensured they got their bezels spot on. It also wears smaller than the SKX. There is no magic or exaggeration in that statement, however. It's all about the perception, and it's all because of the bezel, no less. The bezel is designed to be sloped around the edges, a far more pronounced bevel compared to the SKX. That slope registers in your eye that the diameter of the bezel is smaller and the height is shorter, even if it's not. You may think though that this will be a slippery grip for this bezel, but here's another design choice that elevates the usability of the NY0040. The grooves for this bezel is deep and well defined. Even under a glove, you will feel the bezel grip solidly. This is a far cry to the SKX shallow bezel knurling. The band is made of a rubber compound and is shorter than that of the SKX. This is a definite alternative to many people with smaller wrists, since this would mean less rubber material sticking out of the tuck ring keeper. The no decompression scale has become a signature of the NY0040. This table that was based on the US Navy standards is obviously not necessary for most of prospective buyers, but it gives it a unique personality that others also have adopted. Let's move on to the dial. It sports some great features, punching above the dive watch price point. The hour markers are big and pronounced because of the applied indices that's painted with a significant loom in the middle. The Seiko loom is still obviously the king of looms despite of Citizen's best efforts. Speaking of obvious, we'd be remiss not to talk about that crown of the NY0040. The crown is positioned at the 8 o'clock marker. One could classify this watch as a destro watch, which is derived in Italian for right-hand watches, or watches that you wear on your right hand. Of course, when worn on the left hand, the crown would not be in the way of your wrist. The crown is less refined when operated. You can feel the grittiness when winding. It takes getting used to use this crown with your left hand, especially when you're a right-handed person. Back to the hands. It's a little weirdly shaped. It's short and broad. Its angular shape really feels unnecessary, especially if you look at the aesthetics being out of place with regards to all of the rounded shapes all over the watch. The 12 o'clock marker is also similarly designed with its underpants shape that you cannot unsee once you discover it. Under the watch is a laser engraved caseback. Many find this off-putting and low quality compared to the stamped caseback of the SKX. This laser engraving though yields better details than that of the SKX caseback. The reference line is pretty short for the NY0040. The more common models are the matte black dials and the blue sunburst. The bolder model is the full loom dial version that's a guaranteed eye catcher no matter what situation you're in. And then there are rarer versions that are harder to come by. There's this rare yellow version, the NY0040-25Y. But arguably, the most valuable version of the NY0040 is the one that's issued to the Italian Navy Marina Militare. In the 90s, the Commandos of Aqua Incursori, or COMSUBIN for short, adopted the Citizen NY0040 for official use. Legend has it that the COMSUBIN commissioned Citizen for a 500-meter version of the NY0040. The watch is already ISO certified at 200 meters commercially and would probably pass off for many rigorous use, and Citizen actually did that and passed it off to the Italian Navy without any modifications. The Navy tested it nonetheless, and it actually passed the 500-meter tests. Hence, this was written on the dials of the military-issued NY0040s. They continued to use this for over a decade. These proudly bears the Marina Militare branding at the 12 o'clock position and is highly collectible since many of them have been worn out and damaged extensively. A recent example sold at eBay at over $1,600, almost 10 times the normal price. It's the clear underdog of the Japanese dive scene, but not a pushover compared to its rival. It's an overshadowed gem that's also used by a secretive military division, and fittingly so. It doesn't have to be popular to merit its potential and actual capabilities. But for what it does well and efficiently. If a battle-hardened commando can wear it proudly on his wrist, the least that it could be for us normal citizen is an alternative.